Hello everyone, it's Amy, the introvert, aka just Amy, or if you're my mom or my friend Sam, Ames. Apparently there's the way to shorten a three-letter name is to switch it to another word that would be three letters, so fine with me. Yesterday we went to Fort Desoto and I neglected to film a hey, we're going to Fort Desoto intro and hey, we went to Fort Desoto outro. So here we are. Yeah, it was beautiful. It's February right now, February 26th. So we went on the 25th in Florida. So this is like the beautiful weather season, generally speaking, for any person who lives in Florida or comes and visits this time of year. It's usually kind of dry, doesn't really rain, and it's just like yesterday. It was 72 degrees down on the beach, breezy, sunny, gorgeous. Really no humidity. So ideal. We went just to really walk around. We weren't going to the beach to sit on the beach with an umbrella or anything like that. Basically, we walked around the fort, and I'll put that footage in a minute here. And then we walked along the North Beach for a bit. So it was beautiful. It was very nice. We're gonna probably go back next weekend and actually do the whole beach thing because it was just so nice out. It was a little crowded, but it's such a large park, relatively speaking, when it comes to the beach, that it can hold a lot of people and you don't feel like you're shoulder to shoulder with other people, which is nice.
Did you copy all this stuff over to the hard drive that I gave you?
No, I need to. Right now I have it all in the cloud, my Apple.
Oh wow, I didn't realize you had that much space in the cloud.
I ended up upgrading, so I upgraded to the 2 terabyte thing.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's $10 a month instead of 5, so it's fine. If everything can stay where it's at, cool.
Yeah. Plus you can access it wherever you want,
Yep.
like if you're on vacation or something.
Well, that's the thing. It's between the 2 laptops I use, I can see the videos I've dumped on the computer in both places.
Yeah. Kind of weird to think there was a military presence here at one point.
I know. I remember coming here in elementary school, and look how pretty the water is. A little stirred up, but not bad.
Wow, what is that thing out there?
I don't know. It's been there for a while, though. But I remember coming here in elementary school and them talking about the fort and the presidents and all that, and that they had to wear wool, suits, essentially, like military outfits.
Oh god,
And
these are so hot.
I know, I remember thinking, that sounds suffocating.
Look at the osprey.
Yeah.
That's out there.
It's pretty. Must have caught something. Definitely beautiful out, though.
Yeah, that is beautiful, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Look at the dirt trail down there too.
Mm-hmm. Say cheese. Handsome. So, for those of you that don't know, Fort Desoto is a nature park in Pinellas County. It's basically the very end of the county. So, if you're looking, if you have, I need to get the map. That would be helpful. But we'll start with this, and then I'll film the map in a second. Or I'll impose an image in, and you'll be able to see. So, if you look at Pinellas County, it's a peninsula hanging off of Florida. And Fort Desoto is at the very, very bottom of the peninsula. It's actually kind of it's an island. Really, if you look at Pinellas County, you'll see lots of little islands off the coast, kind of other mini peninsulas, other little islands. Anyway, Fort Desoto is at the very bottom. And near Fort Desoto is Egmont Key. You have to take a ferry to get to Egmont Key because it is a key. But it is a beautiful park. It kind of feels a little frozen in time in a good way. So they've done a very good job of preserving the park. So the structures that you'll find there are, they have bathrooms and snack stands and things like that. And they have picnic areas, but the picnic areas look very 1960s, kind of almost like a little spaceship-y, kind of like that rounded, mid-century modern, little bit of Men in Black kind of vibe. And then you have the Spanish fort. So that was, I think, we looked at the plaque that was outside, and that was used in the Spanish-American War, I believe. But you'll see that footage in a little bit, and there's an image of the plaque. or a video of the plaque, and it talks about it being a historical site and all of those things. But what's cool is that because it's heavily protected, essentially, it's kind of like feels like old Florida, kind of locked in time. There's no big skyscrapers. There's a lot of natural vegetation, which is really nice. Because you don't even on the normal beach, like you go to St. Pete Beach or something, and yeah, they have the sea oats and things like that, but there's so many hotels and resorts and all of these things that you really lose the natural Florida, and I'm sure it's getting trampled on, especially during like spring break when a bunch of people come down here and trample on things, drink too much, all of that fun. Anyway, so Fort Desoto is very natural, very regulated. It's actually it's $5 to get on to Fort Desoto now. It used to be free. You had to go through like a 25-cent toll, and that was it. And now it's a 50-cent toll. Well, there's two tolls. There's a $1 toll, 50-cent toll, then the $5 fee to actually park in Fort Desoto. They did that because the park was getting very popular, and the good nature of people, they were littering a lot, so it was costing a lot to keep the park clean, so they raised the fee, which I get, I'm fine with. But anyway, so the fort was used, I believe, in the Spanish-American War, so it's really cool to be able to walk around. You can walk into some of the, kind of in the fort a bit, which is a little creepy because there's really no lights, so you're relying on natural light. And there is one room which is cool because it has a bunch of old photos and printouts of historical things, different buildings, and just information. And what's really cool is that there's a picture of the day the park was established. So I didn't realize this, but I guess it was established as I believe it's a state park, or a park in general, in 1963, and actually on May 11th. So what I find cool about that is my birthday. Not 1963, I was born way after that, but May 11th is my birthday. Very few things happen on that day other than Salvador Dali also sharing the same birthday, and Bob Marley dying, so a good and a bad. So that was a fun fact. Something good actually happened that day. And it's cool because they have, well, interesting, they have guys dressed as like Spanish conquistadors, and then Miss Florida. So like chick in a bathing suit with a sash, and then guys dressed as conquistadors, basically glorifying this new park opening. So still kind of funny. I mean, it was 1963, so much different time. The park itself is beautiful. So we went to the fort, and you'll see that footage shortly, or I might overlay this. We'll see how this video shakes out because I don't want it to be too long. We walked along the fort. It's beautiful. You can see the water from it. How the water flows along the end of Pinellas County and then the beginning of Manatee County, which is just south of Pinellas. It creates these kind of shallower areas along the coast and beautiful water. This time of year it can be a little stirred up, but it was still pretty clear. Actually, no, I think it gets stirred up in the summer. Either way, it was still really clear out. And yeah, it was just beautiful. I really wish I had brought my bathing suit because I wanted to go in the water and swim. Although I'm sure it was chilly because this time of year, even though it's already getting kind of warm, even for this time of year, I'm sure the water is still very, very brisk. But I'm talking a lot and I can feel myself not breathing, so let's take a moment. Fun fact, Gulf of Mexico. If you've seen a map of the United States, I'm sure you've seen the Gulf of Mexico. You have the Gulf Coast, so you have like where Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, all of those, and Florida obviously, border the Gulf of Mexico. So the Gulf of Mexico is cool in the sense that it's actually very shallow. So for a lot of the Gulf of Mexico, it's only 25 feet, which I know it's like, okay, yeah, that's deep, but relatively speaking, that is very shallow for a large body of water to me. And that's kind of always how it's been portrayed, is that it's very shallow. So that's just kind of a side fun fact. But yeah, so Fort Desoto, beautiful. We went to the fort, we walked along the top. You can actually walk on the top and get really pretty views. While we were there were lots of osprey around, so that was cool. They have a lot of they made like little stands on the top of telephone poles or electrical wires that the osprey can build nests in, so that was neat. And then there's a beach kind of at the far end that I never really go to because it's kind of on like the nature coast versus like the beach side. Usually the water's still pretty, but it's usually maybe slightly brackish. There's more mangrove, so it's more of the natural habitat for like animals, whereas the beach side is really just the beach. We didn't go to like the naturally kind of center. We went to the North Beach. But something to note is if you're planning on going to Fort Desoto, they do have a dog park, which is pretty cool. And I believe there's part of it that goes in the water. And then they also have a couple fishing piers. So that's pretty interesting. And several snack bars. Well, several. I think there's at least 3. So they don't do alcohol because this is a state park, so they no alcohol allowed. But they have regular snacks. You can get food and things like that. There is a store where you can buy a bathing suit, all kinds of Florida knickknacks, towels, sunscreen, all those things. So it's pretty cool, the resources that are actually on the island. It looks like they're probably everywhere, but a couple of the osprey stands. There's at least 2 I can see. Oh, there's the Skyway. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew it's there, but it's cool.
Think about how long these things have been here.
I know. I'm assuming they're like ventilation.
Yeah.
They got rid of the stairs on the other side. Pretty sure there were stairs over there too, and they made it the ramp, which I get, so that more people could get up here. Couldn't really ask for better weather though. Doesn't even feel humid out today. Oh, there's the bike shop. Maybe not the electric bike, but bike nonetheless. Someone lost a hat. Looks like a little kid hat. Mm-hmm.
It's a hell of a can.
Yeah. That's not even the biggest one. These places always creep me out as a kid. There's just nothing much in here. Not at all.
So I guess they removed the trees because they were starting to affect the structural integrity of this place.
No, that's interesting.
I guess the root systems.
Oh, was starting to kind of destroy it. I want to say in one of these they used to have like pictures and stuff. But obviously not these because they're just creepy dark hallways or buildings. It's like a horror movie. Do you think they just like stored stuff in here? Or?
Yeah. Ammunition.
That makes sense. Oh, that's creepy. This makes me think of that liminal space video we watched with like the back rooms. Just this is less yellow and more creepy bunker-esque. It's funny though, because on here it looks so much brighter than it actually is. I think it just loops around. Oh, just to a window. Creepy. They removed one of the cannons, obviously. There used to be more. Yeah. Hence the big wall around them to absorb the shock. Actually, that makes sense with the plants on top, too, if those were there back then. Kind of absorb everything.
What do you mean?
Like because the shock wave it's going to put off.
Yeah.
Or I'm assuming there's a shock wave, right? I know, I was just going to say.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, there's definitely a shock wave. Look at that.
That's how they would turn it. That's kind of crazy to think about. This thing. So you'd stand there and like crank it around to get it to move where you wanted it to be.
Yes. Holy shit.
Bit intense.
Some kind of foot pedal system here too.
Probably to lock it in place, maybe.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
No one would ever, if you were coming from the water, you'd never even know these things were back here.
I know. I think that, well, probably on purpose, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But it's still interesting.
You just
Very
know
pretty.
that cannonball hit your boat.
Yeah. All right, so North Beach. If you've ever been to Fort Desoto, I would say, because it had been a long time since I had gone there, so let's say like 10 years ago, so 2013, you went to Fort Desoto. If you went to North Beach, there would be a lot of these very large pine trees, lots of shade, and it just was a very beautiful area. Lots of pine trees, lots of shade. There's picnic tables, so it worked out pretty well. So you could have a nice picnic under the trees. It's beautiful, very natural looking Florida. Well, come to find out, those trees were invasive. I think they were Australian pines, but either way, they were invasive trees, and for whatever reason, they decided that they needed to get ripped out. I don't know if they were ruining something ecologically. I kind of have a hard time believing that because they were there for probably 20 or 30 years. So, but I went back to Fort Desoto in August of last year, so in 2022, with my sister when she was down visiting, and they tore all the trees out, which was crazy to see because it just does not look anything like it used to. So when I was a teenager, I lived pretty close to Fort Desoto. I lived pretty close to the Bayway, which is the road you use to get to Fort Desoto. And I went there a lot because it was cheap, it was beautiful. I took a lot of photography classes. It was just fun. I was also a melodramatic teenager, so I'd walk around there alone listening to, Bright Eyes or something like that and wallow in my self-pity or whatever teenagers do, whatever was going on in my brain back then. But it was beautiful and it was very cheap to get to. Part of that was going down to the North Beach, and they had the beautiful trees. Then you can walk along the beach, and it kind of hooked out, and there's kind of like a little lagoon. It's just very, very cool, very beautiful. Some of that is still there, but with the trees being gone, there is no shade unless you use one of the covered, almost like gazebo-esque, the little flying saucer-looking gazebos, which are usually taken. Or you bring an umbrella. So there is no more beautiful trees with the shade. It drastically changed how this area looks, which I'm sure, like I said, they probably did for some kind of ecological reason, but it is so bizarre in my mind because it's someplace I went so much to see it basically look completely different. And it makes you wonder if that place, I know it existed, but it makes, in your mind, it's like, did this exist? Did I make this up? Was that a fever dream? I know it existed. I have pictures of it. I'm actually going to dig one up if I can find it and show it here. If not, then you just see my hand doing this. Woo! But it's just very bizarre to see things change so drastically in a way that it's unrecognizable. So I can imagine, as people much older than me seeing the world, how hard it must be to kind of, I guess, accept it or wrap your head around it. Like, you know that thing existed, you experienced it, but then to see it still so very different. But on that note, we didn't walk along like so the North Beach, there's kind of an outside part that hooks around, and then there's also kind of an inside path that goes around the lagoon part. That's the part we walked on, mostly because it wasn't very crowded, and it was also still beautiful. We walked along that for a bit, and then we turned back. We kind of just wanted to get some fresh air and get an idea of, is this a place we'd want to come back to like hang out on the beach? Because it's easy to get all this, like, living down here, especially with how crowded it's gotten the past few years, to get everything you want for the beach, load up the car, get down there, and then it'd be packed. You can't find a parking space. Isn't a place you'd want to hang out anyway. I don't really like ending up in those situations. In this case, scoped it out. It would be perfectly fine. So I'm definitely looking forward to doing that. But bring an umbrella because there's no shade. Beautiful beach though. Highly recommend it. All right, so that was my little video of Fort Desoto. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope it, if you're in this area, kind of inspired you to go down there. So like I said at the beginning, well, at some point in this video, I know I said it, there's 2 tolls you have to go through. They do take Sun Pass and Peach Pass and Easy Pass, and I think they accept like every pass that's used on the East Coast now, so that's a good thing. First toll's $1, second toll's 50 cents. There is a $5 parking fee once you get into Fort Desoto. No cash, it's a credit card or some kind of app. I think it was like Freebird or something. I just used the little parking kiosk. So things to keep in mind. So you don't need cash, you have to have a credit card or the app. But hopefully it inspired you to go check it out if you're down in that area and you've never been. It is a beautiful park, very much a good example of old Florida beach. So like what Florida really overall should look like at the beach. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed going. I feel like I'm kind of stumbling all over myself trying to record this talking, but what can you do? Here we are. It is what it is. I'm not a professional. I'm clearly, though I've worked through lots of my anxiety, still have someone talking to a camera. Hell, I don't even really like doing this in front of Josh. That's why I'm like in our bedroom with the door closed so he can't hear me, which is ridiculous because he doesn't care. It's just silly. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully if you're in Pinellas County, you venture out to Fort Desoto. And if you do, I hope you really enjoy yourself. But on that note, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
This is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
There's people fishing in there too.
Yeah. So it's definitely changed quite a bit. Because it used to like arc out. Yeah. Last time we were here, me and Susan like walked around back there near the water and just got swarmed by mosquitoes. Of course it was August, so it makes more sense. I'm guessing there'd be less around right now because of the wind. It's beautiful though.
Big ass boat in there.
Yeah. It's weird, it almost looks like it's in the mangroves. Like obviously it's not, but
No, it definitely looks like it's in the mangroves, like an abandoned boat or something.
yeah. Definitely looks different.
It would be kind of a good idea to have like a little walkway across, but
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, when you rip out a bunch of trees that regulate, you know, or not regulate, but help keep the integrity of like the ground.
see, I have a hard time believing trees all the way down here would have affected the fort down
They
there.
weren't. They just tore them. Well, there's another sign somewhere that says where are the trees, and it said they were invasive. Brought over from Australia, or I think they're Australian pine. But either way, invasive, so after 30 years they decided to rip them all out
Okay.
for some reason, and take away all the shade.
This is definitely beautiful down here, though.
Oh yeah. We were kids, we'd come down here a lot, and me and Susan would be like in this area because it's so shallow, and we'd find like the mermaids' purses.
Are those all birds over there?
Yes, looks like it. You can certainly forget that we live so close to this,
Yeah.
mostly.
I didn't realize this was even here. This is pretty cool.
When I was in high school, I would come down. Me and Susan actually would come down here a lot because it was so cheap and it was pretty close to where we lived.